GM, welcome to another Touchgrass podcast episode. KG, we're shooting after 10 days. It's been a while. We have Nirav
Yeah,
Murthy
man.
from Camp Network. Nirav, clear something out for us. I saw a post. You're related to Rishi Sunak and the Infosys founder. Is that correct?
Yes, actually, if you can tell, Infosys is a company that grew in the 1980s, and I was born in 1996. So that's accurate. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding with you guys. I'm also related to the Prime Minister of the UK, the former Prime Minister of the UK. So my first thought was, if I was born into that family, why not build a blockchain business? So you got me, Russia. That's a good one right there. That's so funny.
But yeah, I wanted to get Nirav on. Obviously Kaido yaps aside. I wanted to get into the IP side and the AI side, and we'll talk a little bit more about how Nirav's thinking about the future of both of these and how crypto gets into both of these workflows. Yeah, Nirav, excited to have you. I think, yeah, KG, you want to shoot us off? Let's ask the first most important one.
Yeah, like IP and crypto AI, like when everyone talks about the intersection of these, the first question everyone gets is why does IP even need a blockchain? Why another L1? So walk us through your thought process of building an L1 for a niche like IP, which is like obviously a very huge market. What is your thought process behind starting an L1, and especially for something like IP and crypto? What do you think behind it? How do you kind of end up think about L1 for IP?
Yeah, super good
And
question, KG, and like very much appreciate you. Hello, hello.
Yeah, we got you.
Oh, cool. Yeah. Sorry, I might have edited that out. What I was gonna say is, look, I mean, it's a really good question, KG. Very much appreciate it, and thank you guys so much for having me here. I mean, a lot of things to dissect in there that you just mentioned. Number one is, if you look at blockchains historically, they've always been like general purpose. Like Base is a really good example of this. Solana is a really good example of this, and Ethereum is obviously the best example of this. Starting over the last, call it, year or two, we've started to see more what I call vertical specific blockchains. So you can think about like Immutable X for game, Immutable X, and even Ronin to some degree for gaming, a B3 built on Base, which is like an L3 for gaming as well. On the RWA side, obviously Plume. And so I think that's sort of where we envision the future going, is these vertical specific blockchains. And so that's one of the reasons why we wanted to have it dedicated for IP. Now, looking at the broader question, why the hell do we need an IP based blockchain? It's candidly more important than it ever is before. You're seeing this in real time. Obviously, Reddit sued GPT for training without any of the consents. Getty Images and Stability AI are in another one of those lawsuits for image creation. And then Hollywood is also suing Midjourney. And what it really represents is what I expect to be a perennially long debate between IP copyright and AI. And really, how are you actually going to train those things while giving compensation for the users? Is it a licensing deal? Is it you go to the users directly? All those questions remain to be seen. But what this really has proven is that provenance matters more than anybody else. In an era where we expect 95% of all IP in the future to be generated via AI, the original way in which that agents are trained that actually create new IP, so what I call like AI native IP, those creators are the ones who really need to be rewarded. Now, obviously, what does the Web 2 version of that look like? It's Google, it's Microsoft, it's Amazon, and whatnot. But even take it back. The Web 1 version of this is Hollywood Scripts, some guy who writes recording masters. The Web 2 version of that is it's locked all on these tech companies in storage. Here's the thing. Those are all centralized entities. And as we all know, they can basically completely just turn it off at any point. And the minute that happens, you completely lose all value as a consumer. The benefit of doing this on blockchain is the fact that it's all immutable, right? It's all decentralized. Not one person has any control of the network to basically say like, screw you, never mind, you don't really matter and whatnot. And so that's why we see provenance being best suited for blockchains in general. Now, when you look at the crypto aspect, fundamentally, the two best use cases of crypto are payments and really capital formation. And so one of the things that we really believe is, if I'm a creator and I put something on chain, or I'm proving that I'm the first to create something and somebody remixes it, then I should be comped appropriately on the royalty side. Now, that can be anywhere from 1 cent in the case of something like a song royalty per stream on Spotify to $10,000 in the case of somebody's remixing, a Leonardo da Vinci painting or anything like that. And so we believe that blockchain represents the best way to handle those micropayments overall.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's like a broader narrative that comes out of this. Obviously, KG and I like super into like the internet capital markets thesis. And KG, I've been, I know you read my internet demands market thesis, but one thesis that comes out of here that's more on the IP side is more, I like to call it IP ownership markets. I think Nirav and the team have a version of that they're working on as well. But basically, you will have IP on the blockchain, and with the bonding curve, you'll be able to price it out so that anyone who wants to use that IP is able to with that pricing mechanism, and the creator is then compensated appropriately. Nirav, am I thinking about that correctly? Is that sort of one part of the thesis overall?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's definitely part of the thesis. I mean, look, the long-term value accretion for Camp, and like crazy to think about revenue for blockchains because I know nobody really thinks about that ever. But we believe we're building the world's greatest user-owned IP repository. Now, why does that really matter, right? If you look at why this matters more than ever before, is in this era of AI. As I mentioned earlier, there's all these different lawsuits. What it's really led to is similar to blockchains. You're starting to see like task-specific agents or use case-specific agents, as opposed to just being like GPT, Gemini, Claude, and whatnot. You're seeing companies like Harvey, which just raised at $5 billion specifically for legal. You're seeing companies do it specifically for healthcare. You're seeing folks do it specifically for voice as a modal, if that makes sense. And so what you're really looking for is new sources on which to train agents in a legally compliant way so that you can avoid these future lawsuits 3 to 5 years down the line. Now, obviously, it'd be great if you can find a place to do that. And what's more accurate and verified than user-owned IP in the first place? I have 10,000 songs that I've uploaded myself because I'm an amateur artist. And then one of the big voice modeling companies or like a Suno Sounds comes to me and says, hey, can I train on this instead of trying to scrape Spotify or YouTube? Boom, that's a revenue potential right there. And so longer term, building this user-owned IP repository also doubles as the world's greatest decentralized data sampling marketplace as well. And that's exactly what Rachit mentioned, where it doesn't necessarily have to be on a bonding curve, because fundamentally the value of anything is what somebody's willing to pay for it. Now, the bonding curve obviously gamifies that to a next level degree, but we expect to see a lot of folks actually come to Camp to train their future agents as well. And more importantly, register their future agents as IP as well. If I'm an agent developer, I don't necessarily want to not be comped for somebody paying $10 a month for it. And so that's something that we also see happening on Camp long term.
Yeah, I think another way I like to think about this, you said like it should Camp will be like the greatest user-owned repository. Right now, where all these LLMs and different protocols, they only have access to the public data sets. Whereas, if Camp kind of grows that distribution of users and all these artists kind of giving their personal data sets to Camp, and that gets kind of licensed and timestamped and they actually own it, the value of that data alone can be much larger than legally giving access to the IP. Are you guys also thinking in that way, where you're building this insane data set and that can be used to make these big enterprise deals, and how that will kind of work for you guys?
Yeah, that's exactly what I mean, KG, by the user-owned IP repository, right? Like you look at these big companies, right? Like Gemini is the best case of this, where why would YouTube let other people train off of it when they own Gemini as one of its core products as well? It's similar with Microsoft and Xbox to some degree when you think about GPT, right? Like you're seeing so much data come out of that and so much IP, whether it's like Halo, you're seeing how people interact online with Halo, whether it's live or any of those businesses. And so we see a lot more of these, like what I call verticalized models. Apple, inevitably, when they get into the AI race, will be there as well. What it's going to lead to is the alts, not to use a crypto term, but like the non-big five effectively looking for these new IPs to trade on. Because fundamentally, when you think about the armies of AI, there's really 3 of them. There's model, there's compute, and then there's the actual IP layer. And so when you look at model, it's like DeepSeek R1 has sort of proven that the model layer doesn't have a lot of value left to extract. It's becoming relatively commoditized in real time. Model is not the moat. Like GPT-4 wasn't the moat. It was ChatGPT as the wrapper that was really the moat because of the sexy UX and how easy people felt comfortably using it on mobile and web and whatnot. Then you look at compute, and like people love to show this decentralized compute layer, but like NVIDIA has a bigger market cap than the entirety of crypto and overall. So like I don't see anybody sort of replacing NVIDIA in the near term future. And so that fundamentally what that leads to is there's only one layer left to accrue value, and that's IP, because the only way to differentiate your quality of the agent is the actual IP on which it's trained on. And that's exactly what we're trying to do, KG, where it's all verified as well. You're not going to have fake news. This is completely attested on blockchain. And that's another reason why we use the chain for the prover mechanism that this is all real and this is all legit at the end of the day as well.
Yeah. And the next question I was curious about is how does camp currently work? What are some of the stakeholders? Like, if I am an artist, let's say, and if you're someone who wants that data to license, how does the relationship work, and how does the entire kind of journey look like? I'm coming in and I'm just depositing my data and getting. How does that whole process look like?
Yeah, really good question. Man, we can take this in so many different directions. So, like this to your original question, this is actually why we built a layer one blockchain because there's a lot of customizations at the execution layer that are required that candidly you can't do on just like a RAS based L2. And that's actually why we had to build the L1, and I can get into some of these. But our belief on Camp is that the form factor by which users will join blockchain over the next 3 to 5 years will be the application layer, as opposed to like the airdrop farming layer, if that makes sense. And so, insofar as that's true, you need to build a really robust ecosystem that people actually want to do stuff in. Otherwise, you're going to see the same problem that 90% of projects run into, where it's like good token launch, airdrop sells, project dumps, nobody really wants to trade the token anymore, and then you're kind of shit out of luck, pardon my French. So, one of the things that we've really seen is you have to have interesting enough apps to get people in the ecosystem. And so, what we've done is built the proof of provenance protocol, which consists of Origin and Matrix. Origin is our developer SDK that plugs directly into the apps. And the idea there is it's the easiest way for users to onboard IP, whether that's MP3, whether it's MP4, whether that's images, whether that's text, and it can also even be data. And the key around Origin is you can basically set terms and licensing around that. If you basically profit off of this, we get 10% royalty rate on this. Or you can do a one-time licensing fee for this for like $100 or $10. It's all up to the user to prescribe exactly what they want. Now, why is that important? Because on blockchain at the execution layer, we've also built in the royalties component as well, such that if somebody were to listen, so like let's walk through a simple example of that. Let's say I'm an artist amateur, and so I upload a song on Hitmaker, which is like a decentralized streaming platform that's built on Camp for music. Then somebody goes to Merv or any one of the 100 of music remixing platforms that we have on Camp. Baby Bear is another one of those. Chorus remixing is another one that we have of those, and makes a banger remix of it in the style of like Alesso or in the style of like Deadmau5 or any of these people. And then they re-put it out on Hitmaker, and suddenly their thing is making like $10 a day or something like that. I deserve some of the credit because I'm the one who put out that originally. And so built into the smart contract layer, we've built that payment flow where if it's 10%, I get $1 a day type situation. Now, on top of that, what we've also built is Matrix, which is our AI framework. You could think about it like more similar to an ELIZA on steroids is how we believe it. But the idea there is now, given all of my IP that I have on chain in the first place, I can deploy my own personal agent or a use case specific agent on top of that. Now, why is this important? Fundamentally, again, we believe that the future of the world is user specific agents or task specific agents. And so if I want my own agent, it has to have a sum of everything that I do online. The struggle with this in Web 2 is most of these things are like walled gardens. Spotify doesn't talk to Google, doesn't talk to Microsoft, doesn't talk to any of those people. And the benefit of blockchain is you get this composable aspect across all of these different data sources because it all runs through the exact same wallet. And that's what we get really excited by you're getting a really holistic picture of somebody at the end of the day. And that's what to us seems really cool. The last thing I'll say is we really believe that if you don't have apps, nobody will actually do anything on your chain in the first place. And so we built a really long time cultivating this ecosystem largely around things that consumers can actually do. And if you look at this recently, we just launched a campaign with this creator, Rob Feldman, who's the founder of Psycho Co., which is like a comic book series. And so basically using 2 to 3 of our different teams, Merv, Storychain being a couple to name a few, we saw people do some pretty interesting things around like building a comic around this. We have a team called Novel that uses AI to help you write stories in the style of your favorite authors. People basically said, like, give me an Agatha Christie version of this. And so within 72 hours or something like that, we had 75K unique users and over 150K pieces of new IP created all around this comic book. And I think that's showing the future of the world where it's like there was all this stuff in Web 1 that people did and it was great and whatnot. And then you saw like Broadway shows. Then Web 2 was like, here are movies, like here's new content online and whatnot. And now people are starting to realize like, man, I'm getting screwed by the big tech giants on this. Like they're taking a bunch of the fees, they're trying to own all the content directly. And so we envision a world in which Web3 will have, there was all this new IP in Web2, but people are realizing they don't get comp for it. And so now we're going to start launching that IP on the blockchain. And that's what Camp really seeks to be is we will be the place where all of that value accretes in.
Yeah, I think KG for us, the value add here is if there was like a YouTube on Camp, So like, you know how like that Clips of Crypto account clips us out, and we basically make nothing off the engagement that they get. In this world, we would probably get 10% back, and that's probably where like the video creators, all these podcasters, they would also benefit as well moving forward. Nero, is that also part of it?
Yeah, it's a good question, Russ. Definitely can get into this, but it's like you guys have beautiful voices. Let's say you upload a podcast on, Rewarded TV or any of these things. Rewarded TV is you can think about it as like an AVOD platform on chain, but they split the revenue with pretty much everybody overall. Um, let's say you sort of do that for the sake of it. Then somebody's like, man, Rachit has such a beautiful podcasting voice. KG always has these good questions. You could basically have an agent analyze all of it and say, hey, I'm going to have a podcast with, like, it doesn't even have to be crypto. It could be like with LeBron James or like Steph Curry or any of these like NBA players or any athlete. But they all do it via the lens of you guys and touch grass overall. Then fundamentally, you guys would get comped for that as opposed to just being somebody forking your entire thing, because in order to access that level, they would have to pay a licensing fee or royalties. So what it really is giving creators the opportunity to monetize every single aspect as opposed to getting rubbed in real time.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I think that's going to take away a lot of the Instagram Ronaldo voiceovers. I don't know if you guys have been seeing that,
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah.
Ronaldo Hindi. That always cracks me up. Um, and then Nirav, like, talk to me about. Okay, so you had this amazing comic book creator come on board. What does the creator onboarding look like? Like, what is there a story behind how you got this particular creator on board? Like, was it hard? Was it easy? Are there any insights there about what you learned about people will their willingness to come on the blockchain for this particular use case?
100%. I would say that now more than ever before, creators are more focused on how to actually monetize in the first place. Um, and so a couple of things to sort of really lean into there. Number one is people are down. Like there's no other way of phrasing it. I think people have tried to follow this in like music ways historically, where it's like, let's go after Sony, Universal, and Warner. I mean, those are like the big clunky giants in the space. They have probably 98% market share. But the thing with them is they are pretty expensive. It's much more pay to play, as I'm sure you guys remember, sort of some of the 2022 grant days, and then they move ridiculously slowly, like in the context of like 6 to 9 months to sign NDAs. And so everybody always says you should try and go get the whales and then go build downstream. But candidly, it's a lot easier said than done. And so what we're really doing is starting off with this like long tail and user owned in the first place. I mentioned earlier, but like tokens have some really good use cases: micropayments, capital formation, and probably a close third would be community incentives. And so being able to use some of those community incentives to inspire remixing is great. That's sort of the first thing I'll say. The second thing is, candidly, I think we have like a monster BD team. We I'm obviously unbiased, but I'm obviously a little bit biased, but I think we have probably the best consumer pre-TGE ecosystem on the planet. And I think that's a testament to the quality of work that we do. It's not just going after like Web3 developers. A large part of what we do is go after Web2 developers and then tell them how there's interesting ways to use blockchain. Really simple example of this: we have a team called Runa. They own the Untold Festival, which is in Romania, 500,000 attendees a year, 3 times the size of Coachella. They're like, what can we do on chain in the first place? And now sort of what we're working with them on is, instead of just like ticketing or NFTs on chain, it's like, let's run everything through the application, the payment layer. Like then we can sort of track who they listen to on Spotify. Then we can sort of see like, oh, you should go to this stage at this time and give recommendations. And so you have an all-in-one festival experience that, if it works, can be applied to pretty much every single festival in the world. They completely were a Web2 product with 2.5 million monthly active users. Now look at what they've done, because they're realizing the value that there's more to just like crypto than tokens. It's like blockchain becomes really relevant. And so I think working with some of these Web2 developers is super interesting, because most of the time they already have apps and they have some sort of eyeballs, but they're sort of under monetized. And that's where we can come in and say like, here's how you can take some rakes on top of all of this as well.
Yeah, I think I want to like target on the other side of the that particular value area for Camp, where the legally accessing IP, where you said going to consumers and focusing on that. But so many of these big tools, they have the distribution, they have like millions of users are using it, they're making money, but there will come a time where they'll face huge legal issues for them. So how are you guys thinking about like some of these voiceover tools that are leveraging others' voices and offering them as subscription models? But at some point, there has to be an IP layer on top of it that rewards the original creator. Are you guys thinking in that way, where we'll be the IP layer and legal layer for you, and you can continue to do it, and people won't even know that there's a crypto or blockchain involved. Are kind of targeting those kind of AI apps as well, because as you said, like so many of them are getting sued, and all of these, like even though they have huge revenue, that the legal aspect is like a big problem for them.
1,000,300%. That's exactly right, KG. That like broadly fits into the category of what I call like AI native IP. We have a whole host of teams doing this right now. We have a team called Hume, pretty interesting. They're actually launching the first like AI record label, and they're basically using blockchain specifically for the payments flow. For all these things which are AI native IP, there will long term be some sort of legal ramifications if the creator is not, or if the original voice trainees are not compensated appropriately. And so blockchain we see, or camp specifically, is the IP distribution layer, or like sort of the IP layer that ensures that all this is done correctly. And so we work with a ton of these different AI native teams. Like candidly, I expect all of them to move on to blockchain in the next 3 to 5 years. Again, that micropayments thing is huge. Like you guys think about what it's like for banks to have to like send people money every 30 days or whatever. It's like an accounts receivable. It's a working capital facility. Nobody really likes it and whatnot. And so if you can do it instantaneously, that's massive. Stripe has already proven that like this is happening in real time with like Bridge and whatnot, where they want to do in the payments instantaneously. That's what blockchain is used for overall. And so if we become that layer, then all AI native IP should be built on top of us. And again, like you mentioned voice, we have a couple of teams doing that. Hume is on the music side for on-chain labels. StoryChain is doing this for like actual content. Merv is doing this for like images and characters, and Rebel is doing this as well. So we definitely see a world in which the AI native IP sort of takes off and will be built on Camp. And we work extremely extensively with those. As I mentioned, like we expect 95% of all IP in the future, in the next 10 years, within the next 10 years, not like over the next 10 years, to be created via AI. And insofar as that's true, again, we want to be the layer where, people saw stuff happen in Web 2, and now it's like, okay, the next generation should all be built on Camp overall.
Do you think we live in a future where, like, imagine like 5 years from now, you're in a courtroom and it's like it's an IP infringement lawsuit, and the other side is like, but Your Honor, I own 5 Ronaldo tokens, so I can use this voice. Is that sort of the direction where we're going at, where the ownership is also a legal use case?
Good question. I see the ownership being, how do I want to phrase this? I see the permission access being done on chain. I don't necessarily know if it's in the format of tokens, if that makes sense, Rachit. And like, let me explain what I mean by that. People are generally having an aversion towards tokens overall. Like you look at the way they've traded down, especially this year, like launches haven't been great. And so this was the big problem in 2022 where like, all the big luxury brands launched these big NFT collections that sold out instantaneously and then traded down pretty poorly right after that. And so I think like a lot of these Web2 players will not want to necessarily launch their own tokens. Having said that, do I see them basically putting their contracts on chain as a way to say like, yes, this person's allowed to do this? Absolutely 100%. We're working with a pretty big Japanese IP play where they do a lot of they basically handle the licensing of Western countries for specific use cases, and then manufacture and do like merchandise and whatnot as well. And so this team that's working with us called Remaster is actually basically putting all contracts for this on chain. That's just the basics of it, because now it's like, hey, look, we know you can't rug us. We get it. You have pricing power. You're a much bigger company, but here you go. Like this is all the things that we can do. Then second is if you buy one of these, if you're one of the first 1,000, co-create it. And if it's cool and the community votes on it, then we'll sell it as well to these like core holders as well. So I definitely see in 5 years in the court cases, if somebody's like, hey, they infringed, and then you could say like, hey, look, you can literally tell on Camp Network that somebody paid appropriate measures that the owner of it put in place in the first place. That's provable. That's immutable. That's why blockchain really matters. And I do think that's the future, but I don't think it'll be done in the specific format you mentioned where it's like, I have X tokens, so I'm allowed to do this. It's more so I've complied with the terms and conditions that the owner set in place, and that's why I'm in the clear over here.
Yeah. Like, how do you see it, like, back to the court question, like, something, a court case happens and the evidence says this thing is on Camp, here's how, like, it was licensed and stuff. Is that, like, under the current regulation where that is acceptable on a blockchain as, licensing? Like, how does the legal or regulatory kind of framework work? Or is something has to change uh, for these things to be on blockchain, to be, from a regulatory standpoint?
Yeah, it's a really good question. First, let me like answer this by saying I'm not a lawyer, so this is all like my personal opinions and based on conversations with our lawyers, which are all media guys as well. So the TLDR is if you have a contract that says that you can license something appropriately and it's signed, then you're good. Now, here's the problem. A lot of times people violate those contracts. Here's the bigger problem. Within each of these premium IPs, let's take like a Star Wars, for example, or like Marvel. I'm a huge Marvel person. Marvel has different terms and conditions for every single aspect of their business. That means that there's different royalties or one-time licensing fees on like merchandise, on sync, if you're using the movie content, if you're using specific character content. And these are thousands and thousands of hours and millions of dollars spent to actually do all of this, like to actually negotiate all this type of stuff. That's why we're not expecting to get like Marvel or Disney from day one. And if we were, like, this would be a vastly different conversation to say the very least. But what we are expecting to see is generally like long tail of creators and initial sort of substances coming on chain and using this what we call basically like origin to set terms and conditions, and that being like legally upholdable, if that makes sense. Like if you can prove sort of, hey, this and this happened, and the benefit of smart contracts is you can basically lock things until somebody does. You can basically lock things until somebody actually complies with the terms and conditions in order to actually use it. Then we sort of see that. The problem is we're never going to be able to solve the bad actor problem. Similar to like Spotify, right? Like there are always a bunch of like degenerates who would go to like Napster, or they would go on like YouTube and then convert individual songs to video.mp3 and then like download it and do that. That's something that we'll never be able to solve, and we're not pretending to be able to solve. Really, what we're trying to do is the Spotify problem, where for a measly is relative, but like depending on where you live, $10 a month gets you access to every single song on the go and on your laptop in a one spot interface that is probably the best UX we've ever seen. That's what Camp is aiming to do as well. Instead of basically trying to like pirate all this type of stuff, come to this user-owned IP repository, pay either royalties or a one-time licensing fee, and get pretty much everything you can ever think about, from music to video to images to text.
Awesome. Talk to us about what you're currently building with your, I think the testnet is live. How are you guys thinking about, kind of bootstrapping this initial user group and artists, and how you guys, I believe like you're kind of gamifying the whole testnet experience as well. Walk me through like how you guys thinking about this phase of your, camp, and yeah, what should people kind of expect during the testnet and some things that are coming up.
Yeah, so we're currently in testnet, as you mentioned. Hopefully looking a lot mainnet in H2 this year. Currently, we've got 24 dApps live, ton of users, a lot of really interesting campaigns coming up. We're going to be running a really cool one around co-creation with actually one of the big AI labeling businesses as well. We're also announcing a really cool co-creation partnership with one of the biggest Web2 IPs that you guys have definitely heard of. And then in addition to that, as I mentioned with the Japanese IP player, we're doing a ton around co-creation. I mean, look, again, the best way to get creators on board is to, because let's be honest, most creators have been pitched on like blockchain at some point. Everybody's sort of focused on how do we bring in net new users to blockchain as opposed to the same 100,000 DeFi users that are just like farming airdrops, to say the very least. And so the best way to get creators on board, number one, is BD, like having people who actually have relationships with them. And so I think we've done a really good job with apps that sort of are close with a lot of those creators in the first place. Again, giving from the background of like these guys actually have product and stuff that people can use. And then number two is like telling them that there's an ecosystem there. You know, one of the things that creators really resonate with is like, there's two types of creators. One of them knows exactly what they want to do, where they're like, hey, I want to run this co-creation campaign and whatnot. And the second is like, I have no idea what I want to do. Tell me everything that I could do, and then I'll come with an idea around it. I think the benefit is, number one, having the wherewithal, and I think this is from our background in general, but like having the wherewithal to say like, hey, here's something that could be interesting for you. I think that's super useful. And then number two, more importantly, is actually having the tools and the apps live that they can actually play around with. Because everybody always says like, this works. Then you're like, can I see it? And they're like, oh, well, it's like a Figma right now, and hopefully it'll be ready in a bit. And so being able to sort of point to live apps and live campaigns that we've run makes a huge difference, to say the very least. And that's how we've been really successful in bootstrapping these initial IPs.
Nirav, I want to ask you a little bit about gaming. Do you think gaming also has a place here? Like, I think about my time back in the day playing Pokemon Black and White, a cracked version on my laptop. Like, do you think that that whole field is also going to go through this revolution of IP? on chain? Secondly, do you think game developers will be able to use IP to build their own games, like build their own Pokemon game, for instance? Do you think that's also part of the vision and something you guys are thinking
10,000
about?
10,000% on both. So media historically has always followed the same trend. It's text, then images, then music, then video, and then gaming is sort of the pinnacle of all of this. Like really quickly, we can go through like some examples of this. Like mobile, like the shift to mobile was a really good example of this, where you had like people texting, that's pretty obvious, or like using Facebook. Then you had people using images via Instagram. Then music was Spotify mobile. Video was like Netflix streaming on the go. And then gaming was like this whole social casino gaming movement that grew up. Like Steam had a mobile project, like Fortnite, people started playing on their phones in the early 2020s. AI will go through the same thing. So you're seeing this with like text, with GPT was the first one. Like basically people were replacing Google with it. Then people love to create images with it, i.e. stability, the whole NFT boom, obviously at the intersection of AI and crypto. Music is now happening, Suno, obviously in a lawsuit as well. But like you're starting to see this, and then video will be next. Like you've seen GPT Sora, and then gaming will be on top of this. The really interesting thing with gaming is like my belief on gaming, as somebody who has a pretty big background in the space, is that all gaming should, like gameplay should live off chain with on chain economies. The big thing is like the compute gets ridiculously expensive because of the rendering aspect. But you're already starting to see a lot of these like agents that can basically create like these really low lift apps like Tetris, Sudoku, or any of these. Like O'Hara comes to mind, which is built on Base. And so I think you'll expect to see a whole generation of like what I call social casino games, or like hyper casual games, which are like Angry Birds or shit like that, which will all be built using AI in the future. And on the Pokemon side of things, I mean, look, people love content. Like people love brands. Barbie made $1 billion off of like a plastic doll. Like people create Pokemon has done so well around like any of these movies and whatnot. Like Rovio, Angry Birds made money, but the movies like Rio and whatnot have trended ridiculously hard as well. And so expect a lot of these like traditional gaming IPs to find new and innovative ways to actually monetize their incomes.
Yeah, I think kind of closing up here. I also want to kind of pick your brain on the current state of AI, where we're at. Two things, like what do you think about the models right now, and also do you think like this is the year AI video like takes that next leap? We have seen with VO3 and a lot of these new text to video kind of creation. Do you think this is the time where we saw the text kind of evolve last year? This year, do you think like video takes over? And what are your general thoughts, or what are you most excited about in the AI space right now?
Yeah, good question. Man, so much. I think AI trends in a few directions. I think you're going to start to see a lot more consolidation in the space. Like VCs funded these things into oblivion from a seed stage. Like I can see Anthropic buying a shit ton of stuff. I can see GPT buying a shit ton of stuff, and all like whatever, all that type of jazz. I think you're going to start to see like folks really focus more on specific aspects of AI. So as I mentioned, like there's sort of two what I would call is like industry specific, which is like legal, healthcare, gaming. To your point, Racheth. Even like Hollywood creation, I think would count as one of those. And then the second will be like modal specific. So like obviously text was sort of nailed, but like voice is one that still leaves a lot to be desired. Cartesian guys and Bland are doing some pretty cool stuff around there. Video specific would be pretty cool as well. So that's where I think like we're going to start seeing trends is modal specific as well as vertical specific agents overall. I think the big, like to clarify, video is almost there. It's just ridiculously expensive to run. But if you see like some of these Sora videos of like a white tiger like jumping in the snow, it's pretty friggin' incredible. Like there's no way you can tell that it's actually AI. And like obviously the internet is very perverse and like whatnot. And so you've seen a lot of these like OnlyFans AI versions or like AI pornography. And like these things have crushed. Like some of these companies have raised at $1 to $2 billion, generate cash flow beyond belief. There's some ridiculous stat of an overwhelming percentage of like OF creators are actually using AI because instead of being online for 6 hours, they're online for 24 hours, and the revenue like quadruples per creator and stuff like that. So I actually believe that AI video is already around. The question is going to be scaling AI video and like how long these videos can really be. And I think a lot of that is going to be revolving around like compute and whatnot. Those are sort of the big things.
Yeah.
But I think like in the next 1 to 2 years, you'll start to see, call it like 3 to 5 minute short films made completely using AI. Similar to what happened with like Pixar, where Pixar is basically like, let's just animate. We're going to spend a shit ton on it, but the content will be good, and then somebody will fund it. and that's exactly what happened with Disney Pixar as a merger. I think we'll sort of start to see the same things with around some of these like AI video plays.
Well, that makes sense. Are you talking to any OF models about this, like coming on Camp Network right now?
We actually have a couple teams that we're working with
Oh
that
yeah.
are doing some stuff around this. It's look, there's the minute you do like nudity, there introduces a whole host of compliance and whatnot longer term, specifically around like you can't have like 14-year-olds like chatting with OF models. This is also like a regulatory gray area because I don't know if you saw, but like character AI had somebody who was talking to like Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones, and he was like so into the Khaleesi, and the Khaleesi was like, "Kill yourself," and he like, so this section like, so like this is something that we. I think at the appropriate time we'll chat about it. We'll sort of make a bigger leap on it, but we've had early conversations with folks for sure.
Okay. I know we're close up on time. Nirav, I have two questions for you. These are like, totally intended for clips. So the first question is, Nirav, what's your number one advice to anyone who wants to build in the consumer side of crypto? You said that Camp Network has the best consumer ecosystem right now. What are things that you look for, and what are things that founders should think about before getting into this?
Wow, good question. Number one is hit us up. We're happy to work with you guys. But in all seriousness, I think the biggest thing, and like I think this is probably a bigger problem that most blockchain teams run into. Listen to your customers. Like that's the biggest thing. Like one of the things we've got really helpful feedback on is like originally when we were building a layer 2, we actually decentralized to a layer 1 because of the fact that some of the people on our team, or not our team, but like some of the folks in our ecosystem were sort of giving us like some thoughts and feedback, and we're like, holy shit, we need to be like faster. We need more customization around this. Like quick example of this is one of the big execution layer changes that we made is there has to be like a minimum number of transactions related to IP and AI produced per block. Now, like, why does that matter? Because validators will always do or prioritize what has the highest MEV, which is 99.99% of the time going to be DeFi related. So if you're like a consumer team or like IPAI, which is under the broader like consumer crypto umbrella, it really sucks because basically like your users experience a shit ton of latency. Then we're like, oh wow, we can't change that at the L2 level. We were gonna have to decentralize. So like listening to your customers is the most important thing because they know best. If you're building an app, go talk to your core like 1,000 users and say like what's good, what's bad. Do that level of beta testing and whatnot. And obviously, as we've mentioned, tokens are really good community incentives. Be like, dude, if you're a core user and you actually use shit and you test it out, like we will give you the airdrop as opposed to just like some flying Kaito yappers or like whatever it really is that's become on crypto today. So I would say that's the most important is really get to know what your customers like and don't like about your product. And don't be afraid to number one, like break the norm. Like if traditionally things are done one way, don't be afraid to break the norm. Or number two, if you think there's nothing there, like run fast, break shit often. If you think like there's just no demand at all, spin up a new idea. Like nobody's ever going to be mad at you for trying to do something like that.
What was there any pushback when you pivoted from the L2 to the L1
Oh,
model?
100%. 100%. I mean, look, it's an engineering, number one, running an L1 is disgustingly expensive, as I'm sure you guys know, between like all the tech partners you need, like RPCs and all that type of stuff. Number two is it's a much more complex endeavor. It's not just like hit a switch on like one of these RAS providers. Number three is getting teams to deploy in the first place is already a pain. Getting them to redeploy again is never that fun. And then number four is like the community doesn't love when you push back your token launch because a lot of times they're just hoping to get like airdrop and they want to see things go publicly. So it's not like necessarily the easiest thing. And obviously a lot of people are not happy, but ultimately I think what really matters is if you're going to pivot and if you're going to make that bet, make sure that you're going all in on it because the end product will be substantially better. And that's currently the case with our community. Our Discord participation is like ridiculously high on both the DAO and MAL perspective. And I think people are more engaged than ever before. We're doing like an NFT mint tomorrow, and the community's like, dude, we're gonna like mint out of this shit in like 15 to 20 minutes at tops, is my guess. And they'll probably trade up on price as well. And that's done on Rarible on Thursday, June 19th as a subtle shill. But like that's sort of the important thing is as long as you guys are sticking with the brand, and like making sure you're engaging the community. Even if you pivot occasionally, they're still going to stick by you guys.
Yeah, no, that's awesome advice. And then Nirav, last question that I had for you. Any creator out there that's watching this, thinking about how they can get involved with the blockchain and how they can sort of tokenize their IP, what's your number one advice to them? What should they be thinking about? What's like the first thing they should do?
It's a great question. First is my Telegram is NMURTH. So feel free to shoot me a DM on Twitter at Nirav.Murthy or Camp Network XYZ on Twitter as well, or on our website. Like, seriously, we're all ears. We love to chat with creators. I think if you're a creator watching this, and it's a great question, Rajat, it's important to know that like in the past 10 years, creator earnings have been compressed. And I don't see that changing anytime soon. And so it's important to find new and interesting ways to actually create revenue. And obviously blockchain represents a really unique case of that. And so I would say is there is a rampant community of blockchain fans all over the world, not just like in your domestic regions, that are always looking for new and interesting content or new and interesting things to engage with. And the tooling, especially on Camp overall, has got so easy where you can test out these things in less than 1 day to run like a full campaign. And so it's just worth doing and seeing what works and seeing what doesn't work and iterating from there as well.
Yeah, 100%. Thank you so much, Nirav. Super excited for what you guys are building, and thank you for your time taking us today. Can't wait for mainnet and what comes next.
All right, thanks, Nirav. Bye.
This video for us.
Bye.